Good afternoon. My name is Marissa Aloya, and I'm an office assistant at Scarlet Media. On behalf of the Rutgers University Online Learning Conference, I'm delighted to introduce Michael Weingart from the Department of Mathematics at Rutgers University. We are pleased to have him present mastery-based grading. During the presentation, please use the live Q&A to ask any questions of the presenter. At the end of each presentation today, there will be a short survey displayed, and any feedback you can provide is greatly appreciated. We hope you enjoy.
Thanks very much, Marissa. I'm Michael Weingart. I have the privilege of teaching here at Rutgers, the State University. I have been involved with various initiatives in recent years involving things like active learning, flipped classrooms, and most recently, mastery-based grading. So what are the goals of mastery-based grading? One is a large goal is to foster a growth mindset, both for its specific pedagogic advantages within the course and for its benefits to students in their entire academic careers and beyond. Another goal of the grading system is to provide frequent, actionable feedback. Frequent feedback is already an issue that you can approach in any grading system, but creating actionable feedback is a specific goal here. We want to create incentives and opportunities for students to engage and remain engaged with specific subject matter until it is well understood. The idea is it's okay to make mistakes initially, but there are opportunities and incentives to remain engaged until they understand. We want to promote student mastery of whole learning goals, right? As opposed to accumulating partial credit here and there, but never really mastering any one thing in its entirety. We really want to promote that mastery of whole learning goals. We want to create incentives to engage with all aspects of the course and to do so consistently through the semester, as opposed to what? As opposed to focusing on high stakes one-time performances. So we especially want to make it structurally impossible within the grading system, structurally impossible for a few exam performances alone to result in a high overall course grade. We don't want it to be that students rely mistakenly on that miraculous final exam performance to rescue them. We want to incentivize working consistently all along, but this is also an academic integrity issue. We want it to be impossible to hire someone to do a couple of hours of work for them during the semester. We want it to be that instead, if you're going to hire someone to get an A for you, you'll have to hire them to take a whole course for you. We want to maintain high standards of learning, and we want to assess the real level of student learning as accurately as possible. What is mastery-based grading? The way I'm thinking about it is not the same as how everyone else thinks about it. The way I'm implementing it in my courses here at Rutgers is not the same as what's being done everywhere else. But here goes. There are 4 pillars of what I'm calling mastery-based grading. There is a list of learning goals. That is a good practice in any course to have clearly delineated learning goals for your course laid out in advance. But here, they are used directly in assessment. Right? I'll explain how that works. There is a mastery scale for grading each accessible item, as opposed to what? As opposed to points. That means that there are no points anywhere in the course. You might not have imagined that there could be such a thing, but in fact, it is a grading system with no points whatsoever anywhere in the course. I'll explain what that mastery scale looks like. There is actionable feedback throughout. There are opportunities to improve mastery scores. So it's not the case that your assessments are one and done, that all you can do when you mess up one thing is hope to do better on the next thing. No, you can actually improve your performance. You can improve your scores on the thing that you just performed well enough in but didn't master, or perhaps performed not well in at all. Right? There are always opportunities to improve. And finally, we need some mechanism to go from these mastery scores to overall course grades. Right? So that first pillar of mastery-based grading. The course I'm going to focus on here is Math 104, Introduction to Probability. It doesn't matter exactly what the course is. The subject matter, the learning goals are what they are. Right? The sum total of learning goals for the course are what they are, but I've had to make very specific decisions about how to slice them up evenly so that each one counts in some kind of equal way towards the overall performance in the course, right? So students are going to work towards mastery of each individual learning goal, and there is a notion of item level mastery, and there is another notion of course level mastery, and that's for each learning goal, right? So each accessible item is tagged with one or more of these learning goals. So students before class, this is a flipped classroom, so before class they are working through videos and answering embedded questions via PlayPosit, right? That has worked very well, but that's formative only. That's being graded only for completeness, right? We're not attaching learning goals yet or the mastery scale, but then they come to class and they have in-class collaborative work. That is being assessed. They take quizzes, entrance and exit. That's being assessed. Each post-class assignment has several learning goals associated with it, and each exam has a large number of learning goals associated with it. Great. So for each learning goal that appears associated with an accessible item, there is a mastery score, right? This is what it looks like when a student looks inside Canvas after I have graded their exam. This is a partial snapshot of what the rubric looks like to the student when they've gotten their scores. So I realize this is blurry, but this is learning goal by learning goal. They're receiving a separate score on each one. Right, so what are these scores? I am not going to agonize over whether the student should receive 13 or 14 points on a 20-point question, and I don't want the student agonizing over 13 versus 14 points on a 20-point question. That is not that illuminating to the student. I want them to ultimately work towards mastery, so that's a focal point. That's the main category, right? Mastered means your solution is complete and correct, or contains only a minor non-conceptual error. Progressing, that's the next category down. Progressing is still a pretty good score. That means your solution shows significant understanding, but contains enough errors or omissions that it isn't up to the level of mastery, right? One of the nice things about using this scale is that I can say, mastery means mastery. Mastered means mastered, right? If there is a certain kind of a gap in understanding, then I can tell the student, okay, that was a good performance, but you're not yet at the stage of mastery. That is one of the key buzzwords of growth mindset, not yet. So progressing is a fine thing, but you're progressing towards mastery and not quite there yet. The next level down is needs improvement. So you've made a reasonable start on your solution, but there is some very significant gap, an inaccuracy. It might be unclear or incomplete. There might be omitted parts of your solution. All right, I still want to recognize the student has made some kind of reasonable start. And then there's the last category of ungradable, right? So I can give this feedback, and the point of giving this feedback is not just to tell the student, how did you do, but now what? And that brings us to the third pillar of mastery-based grading, actionable feedback, not just feedback, but actionable feedback and opportunities to improve scores, right? So the part of the philosophy of mastery-based grading is that it's understood that there is a process of learning. You don't have to get everything right the first time. There is always an incentive to get things right the first time, but you don't have to get everything right the first time. You can get quite a bit wrong the first time. And if by the first time you mean when you're just working through those videos before class and answering questions embedded in them, you can get nothing right. And that's okay, because that's part of the learning process, right? The in-class work is first and foremost an opportunity to make mistakes and sort them out, right? The most productive thing my students can do is make their mistakes in front of me in real time when I can correct them, when I can address them, right? Of course, students make mistakes, and they sort them out, and that is crucial to the learning process, right? So that in-class work, they are getting a mastery score for each class meetings work. Each student, although they're working in teams, each individual student gets their own individual score. that's usually going to be mastery if they've really participated. And their quizzes, that's in brackets. They do get a mastery score. They have a score on the mastery scale for the exit quiz. The entrance quiz is just formative. The exit quiz, by then they've gotten a fair amount of feedback. I'm looking for them to get some right answers. And I don't, for purely logistical reasons, I don't offer them second chances on the quizzes specifically. That's why I have them in brackets. There isn't really an opportunity to improve the quiz scores as such. Maybe in the future, I will have a good logistical solution there. Okay? But where the rubber, and for that reason, I grade the quizzes leniently, right? So where the rubber really hits the road is in the post-class assignments and the exam questions. Right? By that stage of the process, students have gotten a lot of practice and a lot of feedback, and now I'm looking for right answers. I'm really looking for right answers. Even so, there are second chances, right? So for each week, there will be, say, 3 or 4 learning goals typically associated with that week's work. Students can pick one learning goal on which they have scored anything less than mastered and submit a solution to a whole new problem, right? They're not just rewriting the old one. They're submitting they're really thinking through what they got wrong in the old problem, really looking at my comments, really looking at the solutions, and then submitting a solution to a whole new problem. And if a problem that is specifically associated with that learning goal, if they improve their score on that learning goal, then the better score counts. A similar thing with exams, although for various reasons, I'm allowing only 1 second chance for learning goal per exam. That's not a lot of opportunity there. In the homework category, that really is a very substantial opportunity to improve scores. This brings us to the 4th pillar of mastery-based grading, what I call nonlinear grading. That's just how mathematicians talk. I'll try and say a word about why I would call it that. All right, so to earn a particular letter grade for the course, how do we put all this together and get course grades? Great. Now, stay with me. To get an A, what do you need to do? You need to meet at least the standard in every one of these columns, right? It's not too high in any one of these columns, but you have to live up to that standard or better in every column to get an A. So in the pre-class work, working through those videos, it's just scored for completeness, not for correct answers. There are 21 of them. You have to do at least 19 of them. Typically, the A students are going to be doing all of them, right? But there's just built-in leniency in all of these categories for all the stuff that could possibly happen. I want to have built-in leniency before the fact, and not just put students who have crazy things happen in their lives have to come telling me what their story is. Okay? So there's built-in, one of the themes here is there is actually built-in leniency, which is, I think, a good idea anyway. So then in the in-class work, what does 10M, 7P mean? It means that out of 21 scores that they could potentially get, at least they have to get at least 17 scores of P or better, of which at least 10 must be M. What this basically means is they can miss 4 class meetings without penalty. And they have to do something. They have to show up for the rest, but participate in a meaningful way in at least 10 of them. Right? That's actually a very lenient standard. For the quizzes, at least 17 with scores of P or better, progressing or better, of which at least 9 have to be mastery. Right? Again, not too hard to achieve with the leniency that I'm using to grade the quizzes. Now, it gets more serious when we get to post-class work, exams, and overall learning goals. So what does this mean? Out of the 36 learning goals for the course, to be eligible for an A, not only do you have to get at least 19 complete pre-class assignments and at least the 17 in-class work satisfactory completions, and at least those 17 quiz scores of P or better, of which at least 9 are mastery. But in the post-class work, out of potentially 36 scores, at least 34 of them have to be progressing or better, of which at least 29 are mastery. Now that is a very strong performance, but it's not so demanding considering, I mean, it's eminently attainable. You're always in the game. You're always still in the game because you have every week you have these opportunities to improve scores. For the exams, same standard as in the post-class category. But remember, these are separate categories. Key points, right? It's not enough to ace the exams and then make up for not showing up for class and not turning in the homework. No. If you don't turn in the homework, that's an automatic F, right? You have to do the homework and you have to do the exams, right? And you have to take the quizzes, right? So this creates a very regimented structure that incentivizes really staying with it all semester long, but with a lot of built-in forgiveness in case something happens. All right, overall learning goal, what does that mean? Your overall score in learning goal number 1 is whichever is higher, your score in the homework or your score on the exam in that learning goal, right? So notice, to be eligible for an A, your overall scores must be, you have to have at least progressing in all 36 and at least 32, that's approximately 90%, have to be mastery, right? So that's the main place I'm setting the high standard for performance. I didn't want to put that 32 M's required into the homework category and the exam category to reduce some pressure on the students, right? So there are students who do better on the homework where they have time to think, but not as well on the exams. I want to have some leniency towards them. There are students who are still figuring things out on the homework, but by the time the exam comes around, they're acing things. Good for them. I wanted to recognize both types of performance. All right. This is hard for students to understand. I'm sure it's hard for you to understand. If everyone attending this session claims that they understood this perfectly clearly, no, you didn't. And that's fine. And it takes sinking in. It takes sinking in. So I explained this in the first day of class. I actually emailed the students about this before the course begins, and I come back and re-explain it several times through the semester. In particular, going into the first exam and coming out of the first exam, I'll say some stuff about this in class, but I will also send each student a grid of how they're doing in all their categories and what their projected course grade is as of right now, right? So I do that several times during the semester. Those of you who are wondering how cooperative is Canvas in presenting this information to the students, the answer is it isn't, right? This thing is the only thing that students can see. This business, not a chance, not a chance. I don't blame the Canvas developers for not keeping up with the crazy ideas that we, the faculty, come up with. How could they, right? So that's something to work around. All right, I want to call attention to the contrast between what I've just presented about mastery-based grading and a traditional course breakdown. In a traditional course, a traditional math course, typically something like 80% of the course grade would be determined by 3 exams. Right? So here, there are various reasons why that's not such a great thing. One is that it's too much pressure on those 3 one-time performances. And another reason is that, well, in the age of fully online exams, that's just too cheatable, I'm sorry to say, right? A brief word about how this worked in practice, and then we'll take some questions in the remaining time. How did this work in practice? So did this for the first time last semester, because if you're going to implement a crazy new idea, why not go full crazy at the time when the whole world is crazy? So in Math 104, in this course, how did that work out? So this is better performance than in the pre-COVID days and in the pre-mastery-based grading days. Right, so the median score was only a little bit higher than typical, but there were more A's than usual, and I'm totally fine with that. A little bit was me setting the thresholds in that grid a little on the low side because it was the first time I was ever doing it, but I have no problem looking back at all the A's. I think those kids really earned it. But the other thing that frankly is, I think, more significant, notice there are no D's and there's only 1 F. I have a very good idea that all 4 of those C's would have been D's or F's if it hadn't been for the various second chance opportunities. All right. And then in my other course, Math 103, these are crazy performance results. These are crazy good performance results. Again, no D's, one F, a handful of W's, ton of A's. Admittedly, that was partly me setting the thresholds too low. But looking back, there's not a single A from last semester in that course that should have been any less than a B plus, right? So maybe there was a little COVID-inspired grade inflation. I can live with that. All right, Marissa, do we have some questions?
Not yet, but if anybody has any questions, you can send them in the live Q&A or in the discussion forum, either one.
While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I want to ask, okay, I actually, this another comment is actually about what this has to do with equity. So a student, let me actually go up to here. All right, great. So in a traditional grading system, what are the consequences? So look at the bottom part of this slide. So what are the consequences of bombing exam number one? They are actually, say in a Calc 1 course. So this is a huge issue. Kids come to Rutgers and they've never struggled in a math course. There are students who have never struggled in a math course before. They've taken something that was called calculus, and our calculus is just a lot harder. I don't blame the students. I understand it's very hard for them to make that transition, even under the best circumstances, especially this year, right? And there are many weak performances on exam one. So now what do you do? In a traditional system, once you lose points, they're gone forever. If your average is a 50 after the first exam, and you want your average to be an 80, well, this is how averages work. To make your average go from 50 to 80, you have to do better than 80 in the remainder of the course. Don't blame me. That's how averages work, right? So that makes many students think, oh, I have no choice. I have no chance here. I'm sunk, right? So many students mentally drop out, or they truly drop out. We lose people from STEM. We lose people from their majors. We lose people from Rutgers. And math courses are a huge stumbling block in this area. Mastery-based grading keeps students in the game and gives them that chance to get back, to recover from weak initial performances.
All right, Michael, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much.